Hey everybody, and welcome back to another episode of BCS Community Connections. Today on the podcast, I have Mrs. Sonia Watt from the Lice Clinics of America, operating as Nit Not. Most of you in town, if you are familiar with her business, you will probably know her as Nit Not. She's been around for a while. So today we're going to talk about her business. We are just now getting to record, so for most of you who don't get an opportunity to kind of see the front side that goes on in here, we've already spent about an hour and 15 minutes just talking. So this will not be an episode that we'll have a problem having conversation, because we're two peas in a pod when it comes to that. So first, welcome to the show. We're glad to have you on here.
Thank you.
So let's get started and talk about you for a second. So Sonia Watt, tell me your background. Tell me College Station, kind of what put you here, family. Let's kind of start in that vein before we get going into the business.
So I grew up in South Texas. My dad's an Aggie, so This is just what you do.
That's right. That's right.
Moved here in '88. Met my husband, who actually grew up here. His dad was a professor at A&M and just worked here. And so my husband's a native from
Lifelong.
Here. Mm-hmm.
All right.
We got married and finished school after we got married. And then
Finished school here?
Finished school at A&M.
All right.
Matter of fact, I walked the stage 8.5 months pregnant with my third son.
Walked to the stage.
I waddled the
stage. I was going to
stage.
say, yeah. Yeah, at 8.5 months, I remember Deanna's pregnancy, so I wouldn't say walking is probably...
But so both Aggies, and just
awesome.
love being here. Moved to Houston for 15 years and came back as fast as we could.
So what took you to Houston?
My husband's job.
Okay.
He's an engineer.
All right. And so easy transition for him to come back here. You were here, obviously, when you were going to school.
My parents have retired here. I mean, we love College
so
Station.
you kind of brought everybody in. Mm-hmm. This is the little village for you
My
here.
son just moved back, so I've got all my babies back in town.
Why College Station? I mean, I know you graduated from here and everything else. What I always find interesting, especially when we're talking to Aggies, is there is this... I'm going to get my ring, I'm going to get my degree, I'm going to go off and do my thing, but there's always this influx of old Ags coming back, right?
You know, I mean, College Station, so living in Houston for 15 years, I love big city amenities. Mm-hmm. I don't like big city traffic.
Yeah. I'm from San Antonio. I know what you're talking about. And that don't compare anything to Houston.
Yeah, so, you know, I mean, Houston was fabulous. College Station, I love that we have big city amenities because of the university. I also love that if I have a favorite restaurant in Houston. It's no big deal for us to drive there, go to dinner, and come back home.
What's this restaurant?
So there's two. There's Jasper's in the Woodlands.
Okay.
Amazing. And Taste of Texas.
So we'll bill those guys for for this shout out, since they're not local.
Fantastic steaks, both places. So, awesome. So when we went to Disney and we went to the world's greatest steakhouse,
it was like
it was
world's second or third greatest.
At least third, maybe.
That's big billing there. That's big billing for those guys. So.
You know, I guess when you're not from Texas.
Yeah, no, that's like going somewhere. It's like trying to go to the East Coast and find good Mexican food, right?
So, yeah.
and you were saying you're from South Texas, so again, I'm from San Antonio. You know, so if you've grown up in an area where Mexican food is the staple, the first thing that I learned about that was you go somewhere and there's breakfast taco and there's breakfast burritos, right?
Oh, yeah.
But breakfast taco outside of those areas is pretty little, you know, and their breakfast burrito outside of those areas is about the size of breakfast tacos in the places where it's true Mexican food. So, and then their burritos are really burritos. So that's the first thing you kind of get used to get out of those areas. I love me some good Mexican food, by the way.
Oh, yeah.
So.
We were in South Carolina we were along the East Coast for 6 months back, I don't know, 10, 15 years ago. And we had the opportunity to go to someone's house and for me to make an authentic meal because my kids and my husband were missing it.
Right.
And the family says, well, we've never had Mexican food. And then she says, oh, wait, we've been to Taco Bell.
Oh, my gosh. Blasphemy.
So I went to the grocery store to find the things I needed, and I mean, all I could find was tamales in a can. I didn't even know they came canned. And it was just an interesting meal.
Yeah, so a lot of people who listen to the podcast are local, but somebody's going to be in one of those areas like, I love canned tamales. What are you talking about? Yeah, they won't have a clue as to what, or the people who are here are like, canned tamales. Yeah, those are probably the same people that eat Vienna sausage out of a can too and call them hot dogs or something. I don't know. So
exactly.
All right. So came to College Station, went back to Houston, came back here again, settled in. What year was that you came back to College Station?
That would have been, let's see, my 14-year-old, 10 years ago.
Okay. So 2010, birth of Nit Not. And so birth of Nit Not happens in 2012. Mm-hmm. Okay. So how'd that come about?
So I taught in Houston. I've taught kinder through high school. Just decided when we moved back here that I wasn't going to be teaching any longer. Started looking for opportunities for our family other than me just getting a job. We had 3 boys in high school at the time, and figured they're going to be going to college soon, and and so started looking at business opportunities. Looked at ink refill. Looked at restaurants. Looked at, I mean, you name it, we looked into it. Franchises, the whole ran the whole gamut, and was at the elementary school picking up my girls one day. And this was back when we would send kids home from lice from school, because we don't do that anymore. But the nurse was in there with a dad telling him that his girls had lice and that they couldn't stay at school. And so the dad had two kiddos there, and he got really teary-eyed. And he says, this is the 3rd time they've had lice this year. I'm a single dad. I don't have any more vacation. I don't know what to do. And she says, I wish somebody would start a business using the Louse Buster, which is what our machine, which is now called the Aerolay.
So in our hour and 15-minute conversation, I managed to completely mutilate that term or the name.
Louse Buster was a lot easier to say.
Yeah. So if you go and say Louse Buster, Sonia's going to know what you're referring to. So
exactly.
We'll talk a little bit more about that.
But so she says, I wish somebody would start a business using this. And so I went home and told my husband. This technology was licensed by the University of Utah. My husband worked for A&M at the time, and they had a program that was licensed by A&M that he was working in that department. And so he understood that process. So we decided within a week to go ahead and start a business. But it's funny because I'm terrified of bugs. Like to this day, Jim will go home from the office if there's a bug in the house because I cannot kill it. Now, lice I'm okay with. Yeah,
maybe they're this tiny.
But if there's a spider in the house, then I'm moving out till he comes home.
That's right. Jim's on call. Jim needs to start a pest control operation. It sounds like you could be working on the little bugs. He works on the big bugs. So, we were talking about, before we came on air, we were talking about your business is unique for multiple reasons. Number one, this is not something you just kind of like go out and pass out a bunch of cards and you're sitting there going, hey, come and see me. That's not really where you're at. Where you're at you're a need almost. So it becomes, man, I don't want to compare it to medical because we may promote you to PhD here of lice by the time we get done with this. But the idea of that is people are not seeking you out until they need to seek you out, right? And so, promoting a business like that, while it is a niche business of, man, we're down to right here, right? And we were kind of talking before we came on here about, from 2012 really to this point, your competition here locally isn't really, there really isn't any, and people know more so about you and your business through word of mouth, meaning people who've used your services and then they turn back around and they tell their friends about it who maybe need that service at that point while they're doing it. So it's a unique opportunity in that your marketing has to really kind of be it has to really be laser focused. You're not just blasting this out going, let me go on Facebook and boost a post to 10,000 people, because those 10,000 people probably don't have a need for that particular service. And you're probably looking at a very, very small percent that would hit anyway, that would resonate with. Now, resonating is kind of the back end of this. So people who've tried to do this on their own and then use your service have a very great appreciation for that. And we'll walk through that, what that looks like really for people who come to your doorstep. But as you are working through marketing what it is that you do, there's a need that happens before that, which, most people would say, yeah, that kind of happens anyway in marketing. There are people who need this product or need this service or whatever. Your need is real specific though, right? And it's not just randomly on every corner that you're going to have somebody just showing up. And so I can probably guess that the need for your service really runs more so around school year. I know it's a year-long process, but
in Texas, really, we don't have an off season. There are some northern states where there is a bit more of a fluctuation.
Right.
In Texas, it's humid enough all year long. So 3% of the population on any given day has lice.
Interesting. That we have a lot of people listening to this right now. They're scratching their head and they're like,
what is that itchy?
Yeah, just the conversation. You posted something on your Facebook page that had like a little person laying in bed and the brain says, "Oh, I'm itchy," and then the brain comes back and says something like, "Maybe it's lice," and then
that's why I get that 2:00 phone call.
Oh yeah,
with the tears and.
Yeah. So we were talking about before we came on air, I can relate to this because I had a family member who got lice at a very early age. And I can remember my wife, and I'm fixing to give away who this is. I'm fixing to give it away. So if you listen really closely, you're going to be able to figure out who it was in my family that got lice. So my wife and her sister were working through this process, the two of them trying to go to the store and get the little foam and spray it all in and, pick every little nit out and bug and everything else that's going on. I was laughing because I told Sonia when I came home, my wife and I were living in an apartment up in Amarillo, and I came home and I thought I'd been robbed because all of my stuff was thrown out on the lawn. Every pillow we owned, every clothes, it just tossed out on the lawn. And I come walking home and I'm like sitting there, I'm like, what is going on? But I can remember specifically the frustration on both my wife and her sister's face of trying to deal with this on their own. So I guess I got to see it from not being involved in it. I definitely didn't want to be involved in it. I'm sure a lot of dads out there can probably relate to that as well too. And I'm sure there's a lot of moms out there that probably are listening to this that have been through the process of them trying to do it and sitting there going, oh my gosh, if I had known that this was around, or if I knew that this was a service that was offered, I'd have paid for that 10 times over, right? And so that's really the uniqueness about your business is people who have used your service. I always tell everybody when they sit down here in the chair, I try to do a lot of research. I think Sonia was a little freaked out by how much research I'd actually done. Knowing that you love to dance, right? And so in the process of researching through all of that, you have a good comprehension of the idea that I see your marketing and I see how the company markets through to people, but the realistic part of that is it is a marketing part that the experience has to be your true marketing friend, right? So it's people show up at your doorstep. I would have to imagine, I'm trying to envision myself being at your business. Does anybody show up at your business happy?
No.
Yeah, I'm just trying to hey, how are you? Here's my daughter. I can't envision that being a very pleasant process showing up at your front door. I can imagine people showing up at your front door just being absolutely flabbergasted by what they're up against, the frustration that they probably already tried to handle it on their end and don't have a clue of what they need to do next. Or, hey, we did this, we started the process. I watched YouTube, whatever that looks like. And I did all of these little things, or I did what my grandma told me to do from 50 years ago. And here I am at your doorstep because they're still here, right? So let's talk a little bit about facts about lice, myths, and old wives' tales about lice. That's lice, not about lives, about lice. So there's a lot of misperception on there. And the reason that this lended to a question that I wanted to ask you was one of the things that I saw on your website, not on the website, on the Facebook site, is that lice can hold their breath underwater for 2 hours, right? And I'm thinking to myself, I was like, man, the first thing, this is the dad in me coming out, like, let's go to the pool and drown these suckers. There's chlorine in there. That'll kill them all off, that kind of stuff. So let's talk about some of those kind of facts and myths of things that you've seen come in where people have maybe done grandma's, little therapies for getting rid of lice, and what works, what doesn't work. And that way we can kind of guide people down this path a little bit.
Okay. So, yeah, they can hold their breath because we get during the summer, a lot of people, we're at the pool all day, and it really doesn't affect the lice.
Yeah.
They don't have knees, so they can't jump because we do get a lot of, I saw the bug jump from person to person. That they don't jump.
This is like a National Geographic thing. I'm amazed.
No
we are 2 facts in here, and I am already amazed.
They also don't have wings, so they can't fly.
Right.
One of the things that we do at the clinic is that we do try to educate families. So if we find a live bug during our screening, we'll usually put it in our hand, and if it's a little kid, we might even name it.
Nice, Larry the lice.
But what's interesting is if it walks across my hand and it gets to the edge, it just falls off.
Yeah.
So it's not like an ant or a spider that can, walk on the backside of your hand
Interesting.
and that type of thing. So they
need a flat surface.
They need a flat surface or hair. So if you imagine a lobster,
yes,
a teeny, teeny, tiny lobster, they have claws like that.
Okay.
And they can climb up and down the hair lightning fast. And you put them on a flat surface, they can walk across it, but they're really not going anywhere.
Right. They don't have the ability to go underside. Like if they're on let's say a smooth surface or a flat surface that doesn't have something for them to latch onto, I guess with claws, they can't really make their ability to underside of something.
Right. So like if they're on the couch, let's say you're on the couch and you scratch and a bug falls on the couch and it falls behind the cushions, it can't make its way out of there.
Right.
If it lands on the flat cushion and you lay down and your hair is there, it can get back on you, but
So common misperception then pillows. Let's talk about pillows because that's obviously the first thing. Like I said, when I came home, the first thing that I was robbed with was pillows on the lawn and everything else. So a lot of people, their first initial inclination is to throw the pillows away.
Throw out all the pillows, throw out all the hairbrushes, throw out all the hair stuff. I mean, they want to pack up their house and move away.
Like fumigate this thing, right?
And you don't need to. The pillows, if you have a pillowcase, you can take it off and put on a clean pillowcase. You can throw your pillow in the dryer for 30 minutes. They're really pretty easy to kill off the head.
Yeah. So, but they need the head to survive.
So if you think about a chicken egg that you've got kids that come home and they've got their chicken eggs and they have to incubate them and they wait and all that. The eggs have to incubate on our scalp. So that's why the eggs are right up against the scalp. Okay. If someone comes in and they have lots of nits that are, and a nit is another word for an egg, but if they're further down the hair, they can't get that heat and so they'll die.
So really more than likely, if the lice has gone and laid that egg on a strand of hair that's away from the scalp, that's probably not going to make it.
Right. So if you're wearing, for instance, a ponytail, sometimes kids will have, they wear ponytails all the time. And so the bug will lay an egg thinking that strand of hair is close to the scalp. But when you let the hair down, the hair falls away from the scalp and those eggs will die.
Gotcha.
But they generally lay them right on the scalp.
How many times have you seen scorched earth, like here comes the clippers and we just zip the whole thing off and we're down to a buzz cut?
We've seen that pretty often. And it's funny because, there'll be families that will come in and let's say everybody has it. And that's not real common, but it can happen. And so, dad and the boys will say, oh, we're just going to, shave the hair off our head. Now you literally have to razor shave the hair. Yeah. Like if you leave any hair at all, there still can be nits.
Yeah, because based on what you're describing, the eggs that are going to survive, the nits that are going to survive in this process need to be close to the scalp. Literally almost on the scalp, or at least close enough that there's radiant heat, I guess, that can reach them from the scalp to the hair. So even stubble, they can still be on top of, or still be a part of that. So most of the time that's for naught, unless you're doing a complete shave and then you're still going through the process of picking everything out and cleaning the scalp and everything else. So again, because I can remember the family member who had the deal was like, that was a real concern of like, am I going to have to shave all my hair off? Is this thing going to go away? Because her hair was super thick, super curly, really difficult to navigate, and I think that led to a part of the frustration for my wife and her sister was the idea of like, we got to like pull all of these hairs apart. And I mean, these things are so tiny and they're so small. And then all of a sudden while they're working, they're like, oh, there's one. I can see one crawling around, And so then they're trying to get all of this stuff off. We're in the bathtub and we're like flicking stuff over into the bathtub. And, I think at some point it's like PTSD because they're like, oh, I got this one in between my fingers and just squeeze it and try and kill it that way. And, but again, I think that frustration of this is not always parents. I think it's just frustration of somebody who's dealing on the opposite side of it is the idea of, I didn't realize it'd be this difficult, right? You go to a pharmacy or a grocery store that sells this stuff, the foam and the knit combs and everything else. If I butcher any of these, feel free to go ahead and feel free to jump in there and go, it's called this, lol. So they go and they get all of this stuff and it's made on the instructions and everything else to sound really simple, right? Like put this in the hair, let it set this long. And then all you got to do is just go pick them all out. And, and that process, while it sounds really simple, the process of actually doing it is the frustrating part. Like, it's not just the idea also, like, you think I'm going to put this foam in my hair and everything's going to be fine. They're all going to be dead and I don't have to worry about it. So life cycle starts, one gets on, it lays how many eggs on average?
So one fertilized mama can lay up to 200 eggs. And she will lay four.
We're from Texas. You thought wild hogs was a problem. Yeah. Okay.
So she'll start laying eggs, 4 to 10 a day. And then those will start hatching in 7 to 10 days.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you got a bunch of babies. So really and realistically, for the majority of people, you don't know you have lice for 3 to 6 weeks.
Until it's blown out.
Yeah. I mean, and I mean, we have people that come in that they have 20, 30 bugs. And they're like, we just picked this up yesterday. And we're like, no, you didn't.
Yeah.
But it really is really hard, even for people that itch, and not everybody itches. So that's another myth, that everybody itches. We've had people come in with thousands of bugs. They don't feel a thing.
Wow.
And then you have other people that are super allergic.
Yeah.
So it's really hard to tell. And we get doctors and nurses, ER, that will send us patients that have lice, and they come in and we're like, they don't have lice. I don't know what they have, but they don't have lice. Or more often than not, tell them that they don't have lice when people do have lice. So
they have to feed?
They do have to feed, so that's the bite. So for the people that are allergic, it's like a mosquito bite. You're getting bit. They need the blood to feed. They feed about every 4 hours. And so for people that are severely allergic, I mean, if you can imagine living with a mosquito on you.
Yeah. I mean, your head could just be lit up, right?
And then that's part of the issue is if you wait too long, when they come in, their scalp is all torn up. I mean, it's just, it's got scratches and scabs and that's hard for us to treat. So we have to do pre-treatments to let the scalp heal, and it can be just very traumatic for the person. So when you talk about PTSD, I think a lot of, especially parents from when they were kids, have that, it happened. And that's because the products back then worked.
Yeah.
Because now all of these over-the-counter products and prescription products don't really work.
Well, let's talk the products that you're referring to, probably aren't FDA approved anymore. The scorched earth thing is kind of like, I got this liquid gas that, just.
That was actually a treatment, kerosene and gasoline. And we've had people come in with that, they put that on their children's hair, and even then they still have lice. Although the Listerine one is the favorite, because if they come in and they do a treatment, we use heated air, and you heat up the head, and all of a sudden you're like, y'all must have used Listerine.
You're minty fresh. Nice. Again, so mayonnaise?
No, that won't work. And most people that have had that treatment cannot stand to eat mayonnaise anymore. They can't stand the smell. They can't stand to look at it.
Is the wives' tale of mayonnaise like it's good for your hair as well too, kind of deal? I mean, I guess.
So really and truly, when the hair is wet, the bugs cannot walk around because they have these little tiny claws like lobsters, and they grab individual strands of hair. So they can't grab big clumps of hair. So for instance, when you're showering or your hair is wet, they can't move around. They're just sitting there, and they can hang on. They're just not moving around. So, for instance, if you put mayonnaise in the hair, they can't move around. You will kill some because they will start starving pretty quickly.
Right. They can't get to where they need to get to. But this isn't like, again, the same deal. You're saying they eat like every 4 hours or whatever. So you're not talking about, let's put mayonnaise on there for 30 minutes and that should take care of the deal here. That's not going to be the case.
The only time something like that's going to work is if you put mayonnaise in, for instance, overnight, every night for 3 weeks. And then you've got, and then you've got, of course, you've got to protect your bedding and all that.
Sure.
So there's actually a few stories of some kiddos, unfortunately, that suffocated when they had the plastic wrap on their head and they went to sleep and that slipped. And so that's one of those things that it's just like, that's terrifying.
Oh, sure.
To think.
Absolutely. What other little wives' tales have you seen?
So the treatments, we've heard about gasoline, kerosene, Listerine, Cetaphil, mayonnaise, olive oil. I mean, all the oils, coconut oil, anything like that. So again, those products can help kill some of the bugs. None of those are going to kill any of the eggs.
Right. So the nits are going to hang out. I mean, the thought process probably from a lot of folks is that this is going to take care of everything. It's going to kill everything. And it may do some of that damage to some of the live ones. But if I've got, that mama's done laid 200 eggs in my head, I'm really not doing a whole lot of stuff other than postponing when they're going to hatch.
Or the hair coloring. They think, well, I bleached my hair or I colored my hair.
Yeah, the chemicals in there are going to take care of it.
And then we just have like red lice or brown lice.
Then they're really hard to see at that point, right? Like, at least if you keep them white, we'll be able to kind of see them running around in there or whatever. So the parents, the can't, again, we kind of, I guess there's also that misperception that lice is a young kid related kind of
a young kid
deal.
Related, and you have a dirty home.
Yeah. No, so that's a good point. So I'm older. I'm almost 50. And if, I'm sure it probably hasn't changed much, but back in the day, we did lice checks in the school. You got sent to the nurse. They rummaged through your hair. And if you had it, then you were tagged. And you were tagged not by the nurse. You were tagged by all the kids in the school as, you were dirty. You had bugs. You had all this other kind of stuff, right? So there was a negative connotation that went with that really, when you talk about scarring a kid, that's kind of what would follow with them is that you weren't washing your hair. You like you said, your house is dirty, or you're affiliated with people who are dirty. And that somehow that's what happened, but the reality is anybody can get it.
Anybody with hair, 75% of the population will have had lice at least once in their life.
Yeah.
Of the U.S. population.
Yeah.
So.
Mine's falling out right now, so I'm on the 25% side, so I might be safe.
And if you look at countries as a whole, the U.S. is one of those countries that we have the lowest number. So 75% is the least amount
here
of a population that will have had lice. So you go to some other countries and it's like 90% of the population or 99% of the population will have had lice at some time in their life. So it's super, super common. But we have that connotation or that idea that, we get the phone calls, I keep a clean house. I don't understand it. And it has nothing. Yeah,
it's almost like explaining off all of. So again, the wives' tales deal of them probably referencing it to when they were kids and that same kind of deal like I was talking about. Like, none of these things exist. No, I'm not a dirty person. My kid washes her hair all the time. I mean, all of that.
You have hair, you can get lice. Part of the issue is that it takes 3 to 6 weeks to realize you have it. We have this idea that I'm a dirty person, I'm not taking care of my child properly or whatever, and so we don't tell our children's playmates or their parents.
Right.
So instead of stopping the spread, we're encouraging the spread by not saying anything.
Yeah. Don't share hats is what just don't put anything on your head.
Right.
But that's not the most common transfer. It's not like I put a hat on and I give it to you and you put a hat. That's not the most common transfer. The most common transfer is actual head-to-head contact. Yeah.
So, and we can sit here and we can say, my child's not real affectionate or whatever, but I taught school. I'm telling you, they are all head-to-head.
Yeah.
They're whispering, whatever they're doing. So it is young kids that spread it the easiest, but anybody can get lice.
Right.
We've got, middle schoolers, high schoolers all the time. We get college students all the time. We get parents, grandparents. I think the oldest person I've ever treated was mid-90s, and poor gal came in. She said, I need a check before I shave off my hair. She says, I've been to the dermatologist, I've been to the specialist, and I've been to my general doctor, and they all say I don't have lice, but I just don't know what to do. So she comes in and she sits down, and I'm about 3 feet from the chair before I'm about to do a screening, and I can see lice from where I'm standing. And so, in situations like that, for instance, everyone assumed it was something else, and I don't think they even...
Yeah, it didn't hit their radar. So they weren't even looking for it probably in that case. They're going, this must be something that's skin related.
Exactly.
Yeah. Eczema, something like that. Something that's going to end up being anything outside of the range of what a common sense might think of. Right.
Because you don't assume people in that age category are going to have lice.
Well, do you think some of that is also attributed to again, a misperception that it's young people that always are the ones that end up getting it?
It's
or
young
the most
people
common?
And it's girls. So when we get boys in, they usually have awful cases. Because when they are allergic, they're itchy because they didn't wash their hair well. They're always sweaty. They're playing in the dirt. I mean, we just assume that boys are, for instance, dirty or they don't wash their hair as well.
Right.
And so when we do get boys that have it, they usually have awful cases.
Yeah. Yeah. So again, I keep working. I'm scratching over here. I keep working my way around the backside here of who this person is. But when my family member came, the way that we basically reference where it had come from was an airplane pillow. And now, again, back in those days, airplane pillows were just thrown up in the top and, hey, you need one, here you go. Now they're like wrapped in plastic and all that other stuff. So I'm not trying to freak anybody out not to use airplane pillows or boycott them or anything. But, knowing that the most common way to transfer those is head-to-head contact, and then eliminating the misperception that this is a young person contagion, we'll refer to it that way, kind of also then sets the tone for how people would address it. The older people are in addressing it, I would imagine maybe the more hard-headed they are about coming in to try and see if that's the issue, as opposed to right out of the gate, if my kid's itching her head and everything else, man, the first place I'm going to as a parent is lice. But an older person, the first place is, I probably got something wrong with my skin. My shampoo's dried my hair out. I need to change my hairspray. So it's always, that's never usually the first thought. It's probably the 10th thought down the list. So that's valuable because people need to understand that, that line of defense to that, based on the way you describe it, you're kind of a ticking time bomb. The longer you wait, if you are infected, the worse it's probably going to be at the time frame that they hit your front door. Right.
So if we find lice on somebody, we always recommend screening the entire household or whoever they've been with.
Right.
If your kids are hanging out with grandparents, we're always going to recommend that because you're hugging your grandparents. They are in that close proximity. They're reading books and that type of thing.
Yeah.
The shorter the hair is, it's harder to spread, but it can happen. And so, but the grandparents, are oftentimes very resistant to come in. There's no way that we have it. But I will say, it does happen pretty pretty often. And so those families that are more affectionate, that's where you're going to get more people in the house that.
Yeah. Again, in my head, and I'm sure anybody's probably listening to this, I'm going head-to-head contact. Like, are these kids playing rugby? Like, but again, you don't think about the idea of a hug, being hair-to-hair contact in that. Probably, I mean, it's.
So I'm sitting here, and I've got my grandson on my lap, and I'm reading a book, and my hair's right here, and he leans back. I mean, our hair's.
Yeah, they're on it right there. Like, I lay down with my daughter and read to her every night. And again, every once in a while, our head will kind of come together and touch when we're reading a book, or she wants to see this picture that's in the book or whatever. So it's easy to kind of identify that. I didn't think of hugs being that part of that transfer process. But then, again, you look at it and you go, duh, like, can you really hug somebody without kind of putting your heads together, or at least your hair together, especially if it's a girl or two girls that are hugging, that hair is kind of like flinging around. Even if it's short haircuts for girls, it's still pretty common that that's going to be near a shoulder or whatever. So they show up at your doorstep, frustration abound, I'm sure, at this point. And it's not the idea that you're the last line of defense. You might be the last line of defense for people who are going through all of these old wives' tales and home remedies, or they thought that the chemical solution that they bought from the HEB or whatever and brought it home was going to be the be all to end all. Not realizing what we really need to kind of do here is what you say you describe in your shop, which is it's teaching and training how this whole process works. It's not the idea that by the time you've seen the bug, it's too late, right? There's more there than what you think. And so it's that same deal. As people kind of go to the counter, they've identified and seen the bug. Now all of a sudden they go, okay, well, now I'm going to go get this stuff from the pharmacy or from, wherever, Walgreens, get my stuff, take it home, put this in my kid's hair. But then they work the process. And the process is really where most people don't realize what all they actually have to do. I mean, in their head, they're going, yeah, I put this thing in here. I take this little comb, and the comb is small enough that it'll get everything in one pass through, which that's not the case in most cases, right? And they're not working. I mean, I saw you in a picture working. You're working with little magnifying glasses. Like, you have glasses on that have these little magnifiers in there, so you can get directly down on there. So if anybody knows better, I mean, you're sitting there going, listen, I can pass this comb through here 2 and 3 times and not catch that little nit. Maybe that little nit is tied in there a little bit more than not. Or maybe that, lice is really clamped on and isn't moving as well as you think. So listen, one thing I can tell you is I have not seen a single kit that has the glasses in it, right? I mean, yeah, you can put all these other things on. I hope your eyesight's really good, or that maybe you're going to get lucky and your kid's going to have black hair and white lice, or white nits where they'll be able to see all that. So they come to you, they hit your doorstep. You're working through 2 things. You're working through identifying, basically being able to evaluate, do you, don't you, and what stage are you at, I guess, maybe as far as like how far along that is. And then again, another valuable point, you talked about who all's been in contact. Typically it's going to be whoever's in the household or the potential people, because you could clear that up for someone. They go right back into the environment and they're going to be back in there again. And they're going to get it again. And the perception is going to be it didn't work. The treatment didn't work. And it's not that the treatment didn't work. It's that you're sending them back into an environment of unknown. So if you can identify everybody in the household does or doesn't, then also you can kind of isolate that process. Go, okay, we checked all other 3 people in the household. They're all good. This is where we're at. And so we can move on from here. And so again, something I'm not thinking about I'm thinking somebody just shows up and you're like, let's get started, but if you get started and send them back into the environment where it's already spreading or already a part of it, you're just going to postpone the inevitable. I mean, you're not putting things on people's hair that is going to kill in the future, right? Yeah, I mean, they can walk out the door and pick it up. Absolutely. So it's making sure that the environment that they're going back into as well is as clean as possible. Clean's probably not the right word to use because we were talking about the perception of that.
So we guarantee the treatment. Right. So if we screen the whole family, we'll guarantee that if they go back and pick it back up, we'll take care of it. So we are very diligent with determining where this came from. Is everybody in the family clear? Where, what else do you do? They just go to school, or maybe they go, for instance, we kept getting volleyball players, and I could not for the life of me figure out why volleyball girls kept getting lice. Well, one of the girls was telling me one day when we were treating her something about the huddle. And I was like, whoa, wait, tell me about this huddle. And she goes, well, we all, come in and we're whispering. And I was like with your heads together. And she says, I was like, oh, well, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So volleyball, we get volleyball kids all the time.
Interesting.
And then, then you'll get, for instance, softball or baseball if they're sharing helmets.
Yeah.
It really doesn't spread as easily as you would think. But we do want to make sure that we've got all of those bases covered from where could this be coming from? Because we put in a product when you leave our clinic to keep you protected until you take a shower.
Right.
So that if there's anything on your clothing or the car, you're protected. But we can't protect you when you go back out in the world.
Yeah, once you wash that out, it's over. And so, Nit Not CSI. That's kind of what I'm like. Let's run through my head here. Like, let's identify where this came from. So they show up. They go through this process. So let's talk about the process a little bit. So Airolay.
There you go.
Man, golly. So the Airolay treatment. So this is the most effective treatment that you offer as a center. It's the one that you're probably in most cases going to recommend. So walk people through that process, because I saw this thing, and so you can go to your Facebook page or you can go on to the website and you can see what this thing kind of looks like, right? And so I initially saw this thing and I'm like, whoa, like it's
vacuum cleaner.
Yeah, I mean it's impressive looking, right? But the walk people through the process of what the Airolay, the treatment for that, what it's actually doing and what you're using that for, because this is the treatment that you are like, listen, when you walk out, you're 100% clean when you walk out of here. And so if I'm coming into you and I'm at my wit's end because I'm on round 2 or round 3, or I tried round 1 and round 1 was way too difficult, I'm coming to you for your expertise. And I really, and again, we talked about people don't need you until they need you, right? That you're marketing. It's really kind of the same thing of like, I only want to see you, Sonia, once. Like, I don't want to have to see you 2 and 3 times. I don't want to make good friends with you in your clinic. Let's do that somewhere else, right?
Right.
So in the clinic, it's the idea that I'm going to come in, I'm going to get your expertise, and I'm going to be able to leave knowing that you've taken care of everything, and that I don't have to worry about when I walk out that maybe something got missed, right? And that's you guaranteeing that. So walk us through that treatment of what that process looks like.
Well, we always screen first.
Right.
So even if someone calls and they say, I've seen bugs, I've seen the eggs, we will always screen first, because we'll never treat anyone that doesn't have lice.
Right.
And we've referred lots of people to dermatologists or that type of thing when there's something else that's making them itch.
Yeah.
So we screen first if they decide they want the Airolay treatment. It is a heated air treatment, so it's similar to a blow dryer in that it's heated air. The hot air will desiccate or dehydrate the bugs in the eggs, so that's how it's killing them. There's no chemical or anything in the machine. It's just heated air. The difference with that and a blow dryer is it's not as hot. What really happens is, if you think about laying in a truck bed and driving through Arizona in the middle of summer, you're going to have this air blowing on you and the sun, on you. You're going to dry out and get dehydrated. So that's what it's doing. It's dehydrating the bugs and the eggs. The blow dryer would be too hot, and so it's more a matter of time than it is heat.
Gotcha.
And so the blow dryer is not going to work because of that, but it's a very similar process.
Average time of treatment?
So the heated air part takes about 30 minutes, and we go in little sections because you really, again, need that time. And so we do these little tiny sections, and it's interesting. So if somebody comes in with a severe case, you put that heat on, and you'll immediately see bugs in about the first 8 seconds falling out of the hair.
Wow.
And then they start, because of the pattern, they kind of start migrating to the top of the head, and that's where you get a bunch of them. But so we do that. We do follow with a thorough comb out. We try to take out 100% of the nits, and usually we'll miss some. Yeah. So we know if we're treating thousands of people, and that's how much practice we have, we know that if you're treating at home, you're going to miss nits. We do try and get out 100%, but there's going to be a few left. But because we've used that heated air, we've killed them.
Yeah, so let's reiterate that real quick, because if you're an expert at it and this is your business, this is your livelihood, and you sit in here and say, listen, even we don't get 100% of them out. Those that are at home, that are listening to this that are trying to treat at home, look, if the experts are telling you we don't always get 100% out, what we can guarantee is we've killed them with the heat. You're not doing that at home. You're not doing that process. You're gonna keep your fingers crossed and hope that the foam that you put in there or whatever that you've put in there is gonna kill that nit. And if you miss it, it's just not gonna hatch. But in your environment, you're doing that with the heat to guarantee that they're basically gone at that point. Gone, not necessarily meaning out of the hair, but gone dead.
Right.
And then they, regardless of whatever the fact, at some point that will wash out, fall out, or whatever over a period of time. It's just never going to translate into another live lice running through.
So technically, you can use the heat, and they can walk out the door.
Yeah.
Our deal has always been, and as opposed to a lot of other clinics, not here in town, but for instance in Houston, nobody wants to see a nit in their child's hair.
Right.
Or know that, oh my gosh, I have a nit in my hair. What if I'm at the grocery store and somebody sees that? Or, so we want to clean out, 99.9% of the nits. And, inevitably there's going to be a few that are missed, but they are dead.
Right.
But at home, you comb out, and let's say you do a fabulous job combing, but you miss 3 to 5 nits, and one's a male and one's a female, and they hatch, and at day 10 they mate, and that mama can lay up to 200 eggs.
You're right back to square one.
So what we hear is people at home talking about how, we keep picking up lice. And that's possible, but more than likely you've
just missed it.
You just didn't get rid of it.
Yeah. And so again, training, education, all of that piece that kind of goes along with that. Now, again, those people have shown up, they've gotten the treatment. So the peace of mind, I guess, that kind of comes along with that is knowing, hey man, if I go over here and I see Sonia, I can at least know when I walked out, nothing's there. Like, and if there is something there, it's dead there, right? Like, I don't have to worry about it continuing on the process. And then you guys guarantee that treatment. So
we guarantee it, and we offer a complimentary follow-up. So if they want to come in, in 7 to 10 days, which is the life cycle, for their peace of mind. Because some people will come in and they're not happy, but we get the snot bubble hysterics. I mean, like...
Oh, yeah. Well, I can imagine.
Like if you were an outside person looking in, you would think that something extremely awful had happened.
Oh, yeah.
And not that lice isn't awful.
Yeah.
But it's not... It doesn't warrant that kind of fear, but for some people it does, and it's a very real. Yeah,
round 2, round 3, maybe they're I thought I got it the first time. Then they're on round 2, and then round 3 happens again, and then there's like this just desperation probably that's just like, what do I do? Like, I've done everything. I did it like the directions set on the box. I've done all of this stuff, and I'm still stuck. Like, I'm still in this, and we're 3 weeks, 4 weeks out now. And so
that peace of mind is huge. We tell people you can come back in for a follow-up. And then after that, if you think you have it, come in and we'll screen and make sure everything's okay. And we do get phone calls with people, upset. We have it again, and, we need treatments, and we'll tell them, come on in.
Yeah.
Let us, see what's going on. More often than not, they don't have it again. But again, that peace of mind is what and that's all complimentary with the treatment, because we want to make sure that people are not only lice-free, but that anxiety is gone.
Right.
Because nobody should have to deal... It's unnecessary for lice because we have a system that works.
Yeah, well, and then there's hypersensitivity after the fact as well, too. Like, you're not as vigilant about it if you've never had it. And then once you have it, especially probably within a very small window after the fact, you're more hyper-vigilant and everything. Again, kind of like the person in the bed with the brain talking to them, like, oh, I just scratched my head right there. That's got to be one. Yeah.
Yes.
So, but your scalp also, if you have a really bad case of it, your scalp is also recovering in that process as well too. So even some of that healing can probably even, it can give off, I don't even know what the word would be, like ghost itching,
Well, if you think about mosquito bites and ant bites.
Yeah.
I don't feel a mosquito biting me, and I don't have a mark, but my kids get these big red hot welts.
Right.
And they're itchy on that spot for 2-3 weeks.
Yep.
You can be itchy with lice after getting rid of them for up to 2 months.
Right.
Because it's an allergic reaction.
Yeah. And if let's say I'm single, I'm going to have a really difficult time I have a difficult time. Yeah. Like, let me take a picture with my cell phone. Maybe I can see it. Or, the last thing I want to do is be calling over a friend or somebody. And So I got a favor to ask you. You ever seen the National Geographic Channel? I need you to get behind me and pick through my hair a little bit.
Well, yeah, and so it's so that peace of mind, that anxiety, that there is, it's called hysterical parasitosis, where you start that phantom itching, like if you don't have it and somebody says lice, that's hilarious. If you're somewhere and there's a group of people and you say lice,
right,
you'll start seeing people do this.
Well, that's like what we were saying in the beginning. Probably after we're done with this, you'll have some people show up on your doorstep just going, I'm pretty sure, based on what you've described, Sonia, that I've got something in here.
And so we have a big uptick in screenings in the fall and the spring, because we have all these fronts blowing through, and they blow in all these allergens from other areas.
Right.
And so people will get itchy. And so they come in just certain they have lice. And so we do extra screenings typically during those times of the year, where people just think they have it and they don't. But we love that people now, we're not that last resort. We're not, okay, I've been treating for 3 weeks, 3 months, 3 years, because we've had that as well, and we can't get rid of it. And so we have people coming in now. They have it, and it's immediate. Let's just call and get it checked.
Preventative. And they're on the preventative side as opposed to the
or get it taken care of before
Right.
everybody else in the house has it, and that type of thing.
Yeah. So if I'm using you as a service and I show it, is this a walk-up service? Do I have to call in?
It's appointment based.
Yeah. So I was trying to kind of think of that, like, again, it's not like, we were saying before we got started here, it's not like takeout food. It's not like you're rolling by, go, hey, I do have a little scratch. Let me stop in over there. Yeah. No, I mean, somebody's kind of pre-prepped alongside this, probably done the research and worked their way through it. What I found unique about your business, even though we're not talking about a lot of competition, we were discussing it before we went on air, is we were talking about experience, right? Experience is really the thing that kind of sets businesses apart. I can have 2 Mexican food places, serve exactly the same stuff, can taste exactly the same, but the experience is the thing that can't be accounted for on a menu or on a service or any of that kind of stuff. The experience is the interaction with people. It's how people make other people feel in that interaction. And it's how you feel about the service that was rendered to you after it's all said and done, right? So in looking through the reviews for Nit Not as I was researching this, there's this common factor that comes into that. I mean, there's this factor of like relief that you can see in people's posts where they're on there going, I can't believe I waited this long and I should have come here in the first place. And if you've got issues, this is where you need to come. But the other thing that's factored into that is your name repetitively over and over and over. And it is almost like carbon copied of just like, Sonia was so great and Sonia was the best and I love Sonia and she was so friendly and she made us feel so easy and so that is the part that can't be replicated in a lot of businesses. But that is also the idea that the owner, the person who's engaged, the people who are working as a part of that process understands that, hey, listen, man, when people are fitting through the door here and coming for that appointment, they're not exactly sitting here in the best frame of mind, right? So our goal is to put them at ease and let them understand, listen, man, this is not something you have done or haven't done, right?
Right.
You found yourself in this situation. We're the experts here. Let's take this load off of your shoulders here. We'll carry the burden on this. Let us fix all of it. And we're gonna make sure when you're all said and done that you're happy with what you get. And that's everyone. So in those reviews, when you see them, it's not like somebody went, well, I went in and Sonia burned my scalp. I mean, it's the idea that those folks have walked in, gotten the experience of all of that, where they already in their mind probably have a negative connotation with why they're there. And they're coming to you with that already in the mind, because what's the first thing that we're taught as young kids in school is that people are going to be judgmental, right? Like if I get it in school and the kids find out that I got it, they're going to call me dirty and, I got bugs and all that other kind of stuff. But if they're coming to you and they don't experience that, they experience hey man, let's talk while I'm sitting here running this Arale treatment through your head. I have to pause to say that out. I'm like, it's broken down, Lowell. She told you how to say it. as they're working that through, as you're working them through that process, and you're just talking, regular talk with them or whatever, they understand and they feel at ease because they're not sitting there going, these people aren't judging me. They don't think I'm dirty. They've, if not anything, when they walk out, they feel like they're more informed, better, well prepared in the future if it happens. But at that, these repetitive reviews that are listed are telling people on the front, like, don't waste your time trying this at home. This is where you need to be. And I was telling you, I was talking to my pastor, at church yesterday, told him that you were going to be on the show. And he was like, man, I got 2 daughters. And let me tell you what, if I had known this, that I would have spent quadruple that to take care of what we were trying to deal with in the house. That's really the piece that people need to kind of hear and understand. And when you go through and look at the reviews, if you've never had it, if you're like me, I'm in the 25% category. I've never had it. I've got to see it from outside in. My outside in was watching my wife and her sister being super frustrated by it. And at that time, honestly, not once did we sit there and think about, there's got to be a service somewhere for this, right? And again, that's the importance of having these kind of podcasts where we can get this out to people and people are going, hey, I heard this on here. I remember Sonia talking about that. What was the name of that place? And then if they're not tied into people who have kids or who have used the service, then they at least get this opportunity to kind of listen here as to like I said, I mean, I'm sitting here with you and I've learned a whole bunch of stuff that I didn't know about the process and about the lice and everything else. But all of those things that you were talking about where you were saying the perceptions that's also attached to there, right? Like you have a dirty house or what, I mean, all of those perceptions are all valid perceptions that have carried on for years and years, just like the wives' tales of all that stuff. So when you put people at ease and they come into your shop and they get this opportunity to go through the experience and then realize, man, that was way easier than me trying to do it or to take it on myself. And you do this day in and day out. So let's move away a little bit, because I was also telling you before we got on the air that in my research here, I'd noticed that you guys went on a mission trip. And so y'all went to Columbia's, all right?
That's right.
So in this Columbia process, y'all went over there and you went to is it an orphanage?
It's a children's home.
Yeah. So y'all went there 177
kids.
Okay. And y'all went there for the purpose of screening and just kind of seeing, right? So, and you were talking a little bit earlier where you were saying, we don't identify it as much here because we're that first world country, and that type of stuff. But when you travel into other areas that don't necessarily have the same kind of health expectations and standards that are put in place here in the United States, I'm not saying that Colombia is not a third world country by any stretch of the means, but you go over there, y'all do the screening, 177 kids that you guys are looking through, and of the 177, how many of them are infected?
175.
Yeah. Yeah. And so you're walking in this place and you're going, okay, well, we're here to screen and help treat and try and do all that stuff. So I see pictures of you again on Facebook that you got your magnifiers on and you're working through these kids. So what did you identify quickly outside of the process that 175 of them have got? What did you identify as really what you saw as opportunities that really led to you being able to teach and train after it was all resolved?
Well, so that realization that lice there is a very normal, it's just, people just have lice. And that's just the way it is. And we're talking a vast majority of the population. And so their perception of dirty or clean, that's non-existent. That really doesn't.
It's cultural in a lot of cases. Right.
And we knew that we could not go over there. First of all, I can't do the airlay on that many kids because it takes about 1 to 2 hours per person to do the treatment. And there was no way I was going to get that done.
Right.
What I wanted to do was train the staff and the older kids so that they would be able to maintain when we left. So what we did was we provided supplies for about 50 treatments to be done at once. Mm-hmm. And the method that we used was actually things that they can get their hands on there in addition to the combs and the clips and those types of things that we provided, and just taught them how to identify and how to treat. It was such an amazing experience. The kids were so grateful and thankful, although it was such a normal part of their their life. They would be called to dinner, and all the kids would be sitting together. We're talking, 177 kids. And they would sit there about 10 minutes before each meal, and they would literally just be sitting there picking lice out of each other's hair. They would have lice combs in their back pockets. They didn't have the same quality equipment that we had.
Right.
And so that was a huge benefit for them, but also just teaching them how to systematically get rid of it was huge.
A lot of pressure on those two that didn't have it, right? Like,
yes.
Y'all start. Here you go.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But it was such a great experience. Yeah. I loved being able to go and just being the hands and feet of Jesus and being able to do something for somebody.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, to that point, you're serving somebody else, serving somebody with a need, right? And so, and again, so I always love having people on here because it's the opportunity for them to talk about. These aren't things that we're going to go out and advertise. We're not going, hey, we're missionary trip guys that go and do this as well too. But it is the backside serving that, again, we're taught as Christians or whatever that, you serve without boasting it out, right? Like we serve because we're called to serve. We don't serve because, hey, this looks really good on picture, camera, video, whatever, and so there's more in-depth expectation of yourself and of your business than just the fact that I've got this location that you guys can come to. I mean, that they're also contributing as keeping their money local. They're contributing towards you being able to go on missionary trips and be able to serve other people who maybe can't necessarily, either they don't have access to the service, their financial situation doesn't put them in alignment to be able to use that, even if it is available to them. And the ability for you to then not just serve, but teach and train on the backside so that, hey, when I leave, you guys are better well informed than when I came. So, and like you said, I'm not, not in I'm not serving here so that I can come back every 2 weeks and continue to do this. It's teaching people, training people up to do it the way that you do it within the storefront. Again, kind of that same deal. I'm imagining some of that training is also going on as somebody sitting in the chair there and you're working through the process. And let's say it's the kid and you're sitting there going, okay, well, mom, dad, whoever's sitting in there with you, here's some of the things that, let me show you this, or step over here and I'll show you what I'm talking about. And so you're teaching and training really all the time on probably every single person that walks into your shop would be my guess.
Well, we try to, because we want them to be able to identify. So there's a lot of debris in the hair that'll look like eggs and bugs that isn't. And so we want to make sure that we show them, okay, this is what we're looking at and this is how we know. First of all, it's a positive case, but that way if you're looking later, you know what you're looking for.
Right.
We really, the majority of our clientele is children, although that's not all of our clientele. I would say 50% are elementary age children. The other 50% is going to be, mostly anyone older. On occasion, we have infants.
Right.
We want our treatment. We love when the kids leave and they're just like, I want to come back. And the parents are like, no, we're not coming back.
Yes, this is a one and done. Do you not understand? Yeah.
But we love that. We love that the kids are so comfortable that the treatment was not, when you're treating at home, honestly, and you don't have the skills to comb and you don't have the products that we have, these kids come in and their scalps are all scratched from the comb and they're in hysterics. Right. And then we start treating and they're like, oh, so they pick a video, they sit there, they watch a Disney movie or, what have you. And we used to have a popcorn machine, get a little bit of popcorn and they just sit there and it's like a great experience. And so that's what we want. We want lice to not be traumatic, and we don't want it to have all this anxiety associated with it.
Well, and you say that because, this event happened 20 years ago, and my family member still to this day is like, oh, that was horrible. Like, there is a long-lasting... now granted, she didn't turn out to be a serial killer or anything like that, but there is a long-lasting impact on that is a negative connotation to how it's handled, right? And so, and that bleeds from the person who's doing the treatment. So if it's the parent that's in there that's frustrating, it's like, oh my gosh,
it's not quality time. You're not spending quality time with your child.
Let's bond in the tub over here while I'm picking these things off and cussing at everyone that's coming off. And you got a name to you, Yeah. So it's not a healthy process to kind of go through either. The frustration level, I would imagine, for most people is probably pretty high, and it's probably hard to hide that and still keep your kid comforted while you're running through that process. Whereas if I can go in there and my kid is a 6-year-old kid that goes in there and has the process done and leaves out and go, that wasn't terrible at all. That also has a long-lasting impact for how it's identified for other people. So I can imagine that kid, let's say their friend ends up with it at school and they go, oh, that's easy, man. Your mom just needs to take you over to Nit Not like they did mine, and it was easy.
Right.
So even we talk about word of mouth and that being this, but that word of mouth also is creating another person who 20 years down the road, yeah, I had it, but I really don't remember a whole lot about it, or it really wasn't that big a deal, as opposed to 20 years down the road for the one that's like, oh my gosh, this is a rat's nest that I've created up in here trying to get all this out and pulling hair and cutting pieces and all that other stuff just because that frustration level. The frustration level clouds the judgment, right? So we were talking earlier about, how many people do you see that come in and just shave the head off because they got to the point of just like, this is number 3. I can't do this anymore. So listen, I know it's winter, but it's summer buzz cut time for you, instead of, let me see what resources and avenues I have. And quite honestly, at that point, they have probably overextended themselves financially from what they would have spent coming to you and getting the Airlay program, getting that treatment done where it's one and done and the experience isn't an unhealthy experience, right? So we hear that all the time.
Yeah, we hear people come in and, I've spent all this money and we still have lice.
Yeah. I mean, it's a funny story now in our family, to talk about. I thought I was robbed when we came home, but it's still an unpleasant experience that's tied to that. And quite honestly, like I said, had we had a service like that around, I mean, this would have been, oh my gosh, this would have been like 2000 or something like that. I mean, this was a long time ago. And had that service been around at that time somewhere locally that, again, had a word of mouth got to us or friends that had used it before or something like that, then yeah, we would have easily just turned around, like pack everything up, man, we're heading down, and we're going to go get this deal done. So, but again, the person who is not just selling the treatment and providing the service, but again, the experience of that person is creating when they come to your shop and they have that experience of it not being a big deal, right? Like you're not in there, I'm sure there's the conversation doesn't look like, oh my God, have you seen your head? I mean, sure that's not how that goes when they're in there. And you already kind of have a good front side understanding that this person that's coming to me is probably already at their wit's end or is probably really just like, I don't know what to do. I've done everything that I know how to do. I've done everything my grandma told me how to do. And here I am. Please help me.
And they feel like, I'm buying all this stuff. And our first thing is always, you are not doing something wrong and it's not something you're doing or not doing.
Right.
The bugs have developed a resistance to everything on the market, even the prescriptions. And so you can sit there and unless you're getting out every single nit, it's just unlikely you're going to be done. Yeah,
so let's talk about that a little bit because there are things that are on the market that before we sat down here, you're like, this is a waste of money, right? Like, so I'm not going to tell you to say specifically what those are, but what are some of those types of products that you've seen?
So, for instance, there's sprays you can buy for the house. You don't need the sprays for the house. They're not effective. They're not going to kill the bugs. There's things that you can do with things that you have at home already.
Okay. So a Raid fogging my house is
So
worthless.
the fogger, the sprays for the couch and the mattress, and there's no point in spending money on those. Mm-hmm. There's places that'll sell you a case of lint rollers because you have to lint roll the entire house. It's unnecessary. Mm-hmm. Even the products that you buy to treat. A lot of times the chemical burns we've seen, some of the chemical burns have been just awful. I mean, we had one kiddo that came in and mom put the chemical on. She was a teenager. Mom put the chemical on her hair And I mean, she just went into hysterics, and Mom was saying, I thought she was just being so dramatic. And so we put her back in the shower. Well, everywhere that it rinsed off, I mean, completely down her body, she had a chemical burn. That doesn't happen real often, but it can happen. I mean, these are chemicals. We don't use any chemicals or toxins. The combs that they provide you are lesser quality. They're sharper, for one thing. So if, you do have to use pressure to get out the nits, and so these kids will come in and their scalps are all scratched up and gouged, and so it's not fun. It's not quality time. It's not because of what you are doing. It's just a nature of these nits now.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, if we're in your shoes and we're doing this thing every day and we become accustomed to it or whatever, it's just like anything else. We get better at doing it. We learn new ways of doing it, and we learn what works and what doesn't work. But if I can just come to you for your expertise that's already there, then, hey, man, so I'm going to read my magazine over here in the chair. Just let me know. Or we were laughing about it earlier because we were saying, like, drop the dog off at the vet or whatever. Like, they call me when they're done. I'll be more than happy to come back and get them. You understand that your goal at the end of all of that is that you're creating the business card, so to say, which is that reference or that somebody's experience that wants to talk about how great it was, sending them back into the market that you service. And so, and if they've got 2 or 3 kids or whatever that have used that service with you, and more than likely they've got friends who have kids, and they have friends who have kids, and again, schools, all of these things that people can then reference you as the expert in the field to be able to go to. I'm sure there's several schools. You probably have relationships with a lot of the nurses and things like that there that can go, listen, if it were me, here's what I'd recommend that you do. And again, save yourself the headache. Don't pull your hair out trying to get this thing done. Let an expert do it and handle it from there. So, COVID. Let's talk about COVID a little bit, because we were laughing a little bit about that. Like lice are not affected by COVID, right? So it wasn't like when we shut everything down, all lice went, hey man, we're done. We can't be hanging out in people's head because we have to stay 6 feet apart.
Right.
So what did you see during COVID though? I mean, school goes virtual, right? For virtually everybody. People are not gathering anymore. Did you see a downtick during that time frame?
Well, we did see a downtick. What we did see was families that all had lice. So during non-COVID times, you'd have somebody come in, and we're going to say, well, why don't you bring in your other 2 kids, and we'll screen you and Dad and the other 2 kiddos. And it might just be the one kiddo that has lice, or maybe one other that they sleep together or
right.
whatever. What we were seeing now was everybody had it, because everybody's together all the time, and they were spending closer physical time with each other, if that makes sense, since they were home 24 hours a day. And so that was part of what we were seeing. It seemed to be families, the entire family was getting it more than in previous time. It wasn't spreading in the other ways, because no school, no church, no gymnastics, no softball, all that type of stuff. So in that regard, it wasn't spreading. But nits have been found on mummies, Egyptian mummies from 2,000, 3,000 years ago. So it's not going away, even with COVID.
Yeah. You're definitely in a long-term running business here. It's not like all of a sudden we're going to figure out we won't have a vaccine for lice anytime soon. Right.
And even these products that are, especially the prescriptions, there's a lot of prescriptions that are, you put it on one time and everything is gone. Well, I mean, we have lots of families that are paying for the prescription, and they're coming in and they still have lice. So
So for your business, was your business during the time frame, because we shut our doors in that March time frame window. Do you ever close up shop because you're classified as essential?
We're classified as essential. We could have closed. There were, I would say, the majority of lice clinics in the state of Texas closed their doors. Our concern was that if we have frontline workers, nurses, doctors, and they get it or their kids get it, you've already got a lot on your plate dealing with COVID.
Yeah.
And so we wanted to stay open. And we did get a lot of that. We got a lot of nurses and doctors that were coming through because their families were getting it. And so, it kind of turned into that we were still treating families as well, but we were seeing a lot more doctors and nurses than we do typically.
Business model have to change?
Not really.
Other than a mask?
Yeah. With the temperature and taking the temperature and the mask. There is a little bit of, we can't treat lice from 6 feet away.
Right.
Or behind plexiglass as much as we'd like to.
Yeah. You got the little claw grabber with the little trigger on there. Yeah. Let me get that out.
That's really hard to pick a louse with one of those.
Yeah, I can imagine so.
So, we have a lot of protocol in place, especially for our staff, to make sure that they're healthy all the time.
Right.
And then for, our community, we just, everyone's been very respectful. We typically only have one family in the clinic at a time. So not a lot in that regard has changed. We pick the videos. Our kids don't get to, they get to choose what they want, but we'll pull it. And, so some safety things like that. But really, it's still the same experience.
Yeah, you didn't have to retroactively go back and kind of go, okay, we can't do this. But most of the changes that were probably made were just kind of like, this is common sense kind of changes that we're going to have to make. So.
And we have, we've always prided ourselves on having a very clean clinic. I love when families come in and mom puts her purse on the floor. To me, that's, okay, we've done it.
Right.
The clinic is so clean that they're not terrified.
Yeah.
And so we've already had, we were always cleaning the clinic. We clean it after every family. We're always wiping down stuff. And, because we're dealing with, and although parasites, although the lice aren't going to spread that easily, it doesn't matter if I wipe down the front door because there's not going to be lice on the front door.
Yeah.
But I like my glass to be shiny. I like everything to look brand spanking new, super clean. And so it was, with all of that already happening, it wasn't real severe. The changes weren't severe.
So 8 years into the business, let's armchair quarterback a little bit. You started this thing up in 2012. If you were starting it up today, what would you have done different?
I don't know. Good question. I'm sure there's a ton of differences, but things I would, I will say we started our business a little bit differently than most businesses. A lot of people will take out a loan and build out this gorgeous storefront. And we basically had a little bit of money. We got the machine. As I was making money, I would buy another TV. I'd buy more DVDs for the kids. So
you cash flowed it mostly.
So we cash flowed it. So in a lot of ways, we've been able to handle this roller coaster a little better because we don't have a lot of outward income that we have to send out that we don't owe.
Yeah, you're not loaned up to the gills and got people like, hey, Sonia, don't forget,
Yeah.
I know it's COVID, but we're going to need that payment here.
Right.
So
it was mostly taking care of our staff, making sure our staff was cared for.
Right.
And we were able to do that.
Good. Locally, with everything kind of going on, and I've sat here in the chair and talked to multiple small business owners and things like that. Locally, we talked about, as I sat down with Sam Smith, last week, and this will sound like last week, it'll kind of line up that way. We record early and we release these out a little bit later on, but in talking to Sam, the one thing that he made a comment on that I thought was really valuable, especially to small business owners in hearing, is he had made the comment saying, I now have a better understanding that more so local than probably anybody else, but local and state affect my business more than anything federally, right?
Absolutely.
Like federal, we hear about what may be coming down the chute and what they are or aren't planning to do and all of that kind of stuff. But ultimately, local is the one that is the lifeline to the small businesses. They're the ones that are kind of going, okay, let's put all these things on the back burner. Let's focus on these things that are at the real front side of what we need to be preserving. And so not every business owner is going to be Sonia Watt that's going to be paying for everything as they go and cash flowing their business. A lot of businesses are taking out loans. They've put things on pause while they're working through the recovery process. And they're strapped because I've put these things on pause. My income coming in is half of what it was before. I built the business on not half of what it is right now. I built the business on what I projected, and last year was to this year. We talk about it. We started out 2020 as a business. Our line of sight to what 2020 was going to look like before close down was phenomenal. I mean, we were in the middle of one of our best years, and then boom, shut down. And again, I laugh about it because everybody does and I'm sure this will ring true to you even as well when. The friends are out there and they're going, well, we just all have to do this because we're all in it together, right? And I always say those are the people that are getting paid by somebody that, hey, stay at home, work from home, and they're getting a paycheck. But those of us that have to kill it, drag it home, to pay our bills, feed our families, and do everything else, we need those business operational, and we need the local authorities in the city and in the county that are controlling a lot of how businesses are being able to tap resources, right? Whether that's, one of the things that we looked at was the grant from the city. The grant from the city was a huge deal for us as a business, but it wasn't something that I found out about from the city, and so I think as a business owner, I'd always love if anything comes from all of this that there's a portal or a transparency that happens, a resource place where I can go to. When we sat down, we were talking about Jim Ross's page. We were talking about Sam's page of these small businesses that came together. And it was a gravitational page because there were people who are not necessarily all in this same race together as far as, I'm tied even for Sonia over here or whatever. It's the idea of going, look, I need some resources that I can tap back to know how do I handle this or where can I go for this. And it's the prop up stuff that a lot of small businesses in town need in order to stay afloat through this. And we look around, we were talking about restaurants, but prior to sitting down and our experiences at those restaurants and everything else. And depending on which restaurants you go to can give you a perception of recovery. Right? Like, oh man, this is another broken egg over here. They're busy. I guess things aren't as bad as I thought they were. Then you go over to the mom and pop place that's in downtown Bryan and they're around the corner and they're the hole in the wall that doesn't have a lot of revenue. They don't have a lot of resources to be able to utilize to market their business. And those are the guys that are like, listen, we just need some more lunch traffic or some more dinner traffic, So I think one of the things that we learned through the process was those resource pages become critical for small businesses in town. And like I was telling Sam when we sat down is in any community you go into, small businesses are the ones that are the foundation. Now, I don't care. You can knock that down however you want to knock it down to. You can say, we had said that there will be people that would say, listen, man, without A&M, there is no Bryan College Station. Yeah, you could say that, and you may not be far from the truth. It definitely brings in revenue. One of the things we learned, a real valuable lesson here is how important Aggie football is to our community, and how each one of those games that gets canceled is X number of millions of dollars out of our community, right?
Right.
And they all trickle to something else. Initially right out of the gate, that's impacting hotel businesses. It's impacting restaurants. But there's a much longer term effect down the road from all of that. And when those things go away, again, small businesses are still there. They're still the ones that are, struggling and fighting tooth and nail to stay open. So as a small business, it's critical that those relationships get formed amongst those pages where there are people that are going, okay, look, I've been where you've been at, and here's what I do. And so, again, I was listening to you when you're talking about cash flow in that business. If you have the ability to do it, man, you were probably pretty smart if you did that in 2020. But if you went out and you go, man, I'm going to grow this thing to the gill and I have this huge vision that it's going to pay me back, and you hit 2020 with that, now you're strapped with cash and you're sitting there just bleeding trying to figure out like how you're going to make these payments, because I've reinvested, but I've reinvested into a loan and not reinvested into, let me pay cash for this, or let me wait to grow until I'm financially here. So, yeah.
But what's great about College Station, and we were talking about College Station earlier and before the podcast, and why we moved back, and we were Aggies. We wanted to come back. Of course, this is where Jim grew up, and his dad was still here, and my parents have retired here being Aggies. But this community, especially for local restaurants, this restaurant is struggling, and the community steps up, and it helps. And I would love that, although I know that no one's going to want to go out and get Lice to help me.
Yeah. I need a lot of y'all to go hug each other. We'll send you to the community to go hug 100 people.
For me, that's one of those things where it's very bittersweet to see that love and support.
Yeah.
And to, not that we're over here feeling neglected or rejected, but it is hard because you either have Lice or you don't.
Yeah.
And nobody's going to willingly, come in and get a treatment just for grins, and nobody's going to willingly get Lice.
Right. But people are going to get to learn that you're here, just like
Absolutely.
that mom and pop shop that's down there in Bryan around the corner that has the best Mexican food in town. Their resources are limited. They can't go out there and pull out a commercial on KBTX, or they can't go to Spotify or Pandora and stream out a commercial or any of that kind of stuff. So that word of mouth experience, everything else that goes along with it, goes a long way to those guys. And every dollar that comes into them has to stand up and account for itself in their business, so you're in a unique situation where, like I said, they don't need you until they need you, right? But you also are in this situation where it's not like, it's not like you sit there and go, 2020, the great lice infection year, it's a constant that continues to happen. And the spread of that will continue to happen, just like we checked for it back when I was 8 years old in elementary, and here I am at 48 years old, and they still check for it, and still becomes a problem today. And so you're in a line of business that there's always a constant need for it, but at that same time frame, you're not out blowing the doors off of it going, like I said earlier, let me go take out a commercial that really is going to apply to 1% of the 100 that it hits. And so for you more so, it's the experience of when they come in that they leave with that experience into the market. For these other guys that are struggling within our community and everything else, look, experience doesn't ever have to be second rate. It doesn't ever, you can choose to give somebody a good experience. You can choose when you open the doors that day, how that customer gets greeted when they come in, how much time you spend with them, what they're going to leave with, and I'll leave a little bit of word of advice here. One of the things that I learned being in a Walmart, because every single day, there was never a day that went by that I didn't have to address a customer who was upset about something. But the rule of thumb that I put down is a lot of people in the customer service industry want to view things as black and white. And it's never black and white. There's black, white, and there's gray, right? And so one of the things that we started here at the shop was, you can say that black is us, we're right. White is the customer, they're right. And gray is, I could see how this would have gone sideways this way or that way. So who wins gray? In my book, the customer wins gray every time. So there's very few blacks that are us. It's almost always customer. Those are the easy ones to handle. But if I flip gray to the customer every time, and I don't really settle in the black that's going to prove that we're right, well, then I'm going to almost always err on the side of good customer service for my customer. But I can choose that. I can choose that every single day. Or I can sit there and point to a sign that says, listen, it says no money back, no returns, no this, and in these moments where customer service is really probably even more critical for people who don't have full paychecks coming in. They're cutting corners, they're cutting expenses so that their lives look a little different right now until their businesses recover or the business they work for recovers. Now it becomes critical that you're rewarding people with the money that you spend. The people who maybe this hasn't impacted, they still have the ability to go, look, I can go anywhere I want to go. I can go eat tonight wherever I want to go eat. But like you said earlier, in the Bryan College Station area, in these pages where we are members of, and you see these businesses that say, listen, man, I don't think I can make it another month with how we're doing. Well, what happens is they're transparent. They step out onto the page, they bare their soul out there, and then boom, here comes not the group, here comes the community in there, wipes them out of all of their food, and they're like, man, we're so grateful of that. I know that there are businesses that hate doing that over and over and over. And there's probably several that listen to this podcast that know who those businesses are. I'm appreciative of the fact that they can humble themselves enough and take the pride out of the equation to put themselves out there to say, listen, we just need some help. This is just where we're at. Because one thing that you've described about Bryan College Station, I don't know that I want to be in another community, to be real honest with you. We moved back here specifically because we knew this was a great place to raise our family. But it is also a place of community. It's a place of unity for people who all come together. It's not just the Aggie spirit of Aggies taking care of Aggies. It's the spirit that runs through the community of people coming to the need of other people anytime they say they have a need.
Absolutely.
And so that's really where small businesses can still interject themselves into the mix. The more actively you're involved, the more you interject your business into the community, the better in the long run that community will then turn around and pay you back if you fall in need. So for us, we don't have this need as a business, but we viewed the podcast as a way to interject back into the community to get other people opportunities to promote their business, to tell their story, to really, I don't know anything about Sonia Watt if you don't sit here and we have this conversation, because I'm in the 25% range. I'm probably not coming to you, or at least
There's
I hope.
still time.
I know. I don't know, Sonia, this hair up here, you'll be able to see it really easy if I get it. But the reality of that is I don't get the connection and I don't get to learn who you are unless I'm sitting down here, unless the need comes along. And so reading the reviews and then being able to sit down and have the conversation with you, for us being able to chitter chatter ourselves away for an hour before we even got on here. I told everybody before I came in here and we actually started recording this, I'm like, we will never be allowed to go someplace and hang out because we probably will get asked to leave, but that is who I want to interact with. I want to interact with someone that stimulates my thought processes and gives me the experience of what their business is if I have to use it, but also knowing who they are that's behind the business. That's the piece that most people miss in small business. In the corporate world can snuff out a lot of the good people that are behind the business. In the small business world, we're in control. And I know that's kind of an oxymoron, kind of where we're at and kind of talking in this conversation. But I control opening the doors. I control customer service within my four walls. I control the people that are in here, that what do we expect from them? I'll use, now again, I'll go back away from corporate world and say there's some exceptions to that. And you'd referenced one where we were talking about Walmart and the lines at the front and all that kind of stuff. But your reference to doing it right was Chick-fil-A, right? So listen, you don't have to say anything to me, but I have met people in the community that, let's say they're working somewhere and it's not a Chick-fil-A, but I've worked somewhere or I've gone somewhere and dropped my money on the counter and I say, hey, thanks, appreciate it. And they say, my pleasure. Right. And the very first knee-jerk reaction from me is, you worked at Chick-fil-A, didn't you? Just because it is affiliated and associated to that business. And we had a lengthy conversation one time with Walmart. I remember having some guys from Chick-fil-A come to us, and they looked at us when we asked this question. They looked like we had grown an extra head, right? The question was, all of your people always say my pleasure. What do you implement in the company that they all have to say that or whatever? And then just kind of cock their head at us and they're like, it's conditioned for employment. Like, it is our culture. Like, you don't get this luxury of, hey, no problem, man. No sweat. See you later. Oh yeah. It's every customer, every time, my pleasure. Right. And then it's built in to that culture. So as a small business, if I'm referencing back to people, I'd say control what you can control, right? I mean, a customer walks in and you're really having a bad day because your business is on the verge of something. Inadvertently, that can have a negative context to somebody walking in just from your vibe, right? And so when I see your reviews for your business, the vibe that you give off to your people is reading those reviews and seeing that, there's no judgment. Reading the reviews and seeing people talking about, she was so great and she was so friendly and she welcomed my family and it was a great experience. And I mean, what else do you want to hear? As a business owner, you got to sit over there and I know you're not going to pat yourself on the back. That's why I'm going to do that, right? But I mean, you got to sit over there and pat yourself on the back and go, we must be doing something right, because it's not the 1-star reviews over here that go, man, they had a terrible attitude or they were horrible to my child or whatever. You get how important that customer service piece is to your business, even though you're a business that is sought out during an event, not necessarily one that's a choice that people just kind of willy-nilly make driving down the road going, oh, stop right there. I mean, that's not kind of how it works for you. So, the value of it is being able to put yourself out there with each of these individuals, and that each individual gets an individual experience. It's not cookie cuttered. It's not context of just, this is what we say to these types of people. Right. It's kind of like I said in the podcast when we sat down. These conversations go based on who sits across in the chair. I have no problem talking. I'll be able to talk to the cows come home, but how the conversation goes and how comfortable the other person is determines kind of how they walk away from the experience. Same deal for your business. They're going to walk away with that experience. And just the fact that they took the time to leave and go back and leave a review says a lot. You're not sitting over there going, hey, listen, I'm going to send you a 50% off coupon if you go on there and give me a positive 5-star review like you get on Amazon from some of these vendors that are out there. Would you like to get your purchase for free? Go and leave me a review. It really, then you kind of understand in those types of situations, you get a product in and you're sitting there looking at this going, this product isn't as valuable as I thought, because they're buying these reviews, right? And what you don't want to do is you don't want to cloud how people view that experience through that. You want them to have that great experience where they are compelled to run forward and say it. And that that they take that one extra little 5 minutes out of their day to drop that review in. So that speaks wonders and volumes for what you've done in the community for over 8 years, because this is not like a, hey, look, Sonia, 2018 looked pretty good for you on reviews. 2017, not so much. I mean, it's consistent year after year on those reviews that have come in for you. So that speaks volumes of who you are. People who come and contact you, look, you're infectious. I mean, your smile's infectious, your laugh's infectious. So it's very easy also to be able to tie back to an owner that not only is engaged through the process and really sees a cause, a drive, a need, this is we referred to it as identity earlier, that this is how they identify you. But you had said before we sat down here, like, oh, there's the lice lady, but quite honestly, I mean, you're earning a reputation in the community by the experience and the process that you put out there for people. And so when it is the process of having lice is a very humbling process, just in the idea of not realizing what you're up against for a lot of people. And then when they have somebody that's in the fight with them, that's going to let them walk out and go, oh my gosh, thank you so much. That is really where you've built your business and your niche for those 8 years. And we'll continue to build that all the way through this process as we continue to go forward. But I'm grateful that you came in to share your experience with us, to share who you are with us. You get it. It's not like you're sitting out over here going, yeah, I'm single, and I don't have real good relationships with people and that kind of stuff. And I got this business over here. I mean, you're like, look, I'm married. I've got kids. I get how stressful it is to have a run of kids in the house, and one of those come up with potentially lice, and what that looks like to the family unit and everything. So the ability to be able to identify as well too, and then compensate that in that process of, putting yourself in their shoes, being able to empathize with those people when they come in and that come across as genuine really is a part of all of that experience that you're building over there at Nit Not. So, I love getting you in here. I was pretty excited to have you come. I can't say I've ever been so excited to talk about lice in my life, but.
Well, I appreciate the kind words. I mean, that really means a lot to us, and we really do want that experience. I mean, that's what I tell my staff all the time. And that's what they train each other with is if Sonia walks in and she's not happy with it, then we can be assured that if she's happy, then anybody else.
Well, you're setting your bar high, right?
I am, but having 6 kids, and we are taken advantage of as people all the time.
Right.
When you have that traumatic experience, and we never want it to be fear-based. You have to do this because you're scared to do it at home or what have you. We want people to make the decision because it is absolutely the best choice, and it's going to be a great option for them. And we have superhero names. All the staff has superhero names, and we have our villains that are hanging on the wall. And,
nice.
Having fun with it, not because it's funny or because it's we're poking fun, but because it needs to be not a traumatic experience. The world is hard enough as it is.
Yeah.
And especially right now with COVID. I mean, the last thing people need is that anxiety of dealing with something like this.
Sure.
And
you don't even have to put COVID in the mix to have this be an anxious
right.
kind of deal. So.
And then you've got, the people that are, we've got a wedding tomorrow and the wedding party has lice, or we've got, whatever it is. We've been up at the clinic at 2 a.m. doing treatments. Somebody's leaving on a plane at 5 a.m. and they just found out they have lice. But I want people to have that experience. And I think not because that's who we are. Our whole staff is like that, and that's who we hire. We want people that can put themselves in people's shoes and be empathetic.
And there's leading by example, right? I mean, you can only do so much in an interview to bring somebody in. I always tell my supervisors who interview folks as well too, is like they're always at their best at the table, right? Yes. Like they're giving you an image that they think this is who they're going to want to hire. And I always say 90 days is my mark. 90 days, people can't fake it that long. They settle in, they get comfortable with people they're around, and then you find out who you really have. But the way you avoid 90-day problems where all of a sudden the person at the table that you hired, maybe they're not the character that they portrayed to be. But if they live in an environment where the expectation is high from the owners and the leaders in that environment, well, you stand out like a sore thumb if you don't do those things. And like you had said earlier, if we do this to the expectation that Sonia has, then we're good, but that expectation is the same thing like a Chick-fil-A of like, what do you mean? What happens if they don't say it's my pleasure? It's conditioned for employment. It's who we are.
Absolutely.
And it's the identity that you bring into your business is, listen, whether it's me, whether it's one of my folks that's working there or whatever, the expectation is still the same. Just because it's my business doesn't mean that I don't have that same expectation on Superwoman Sally over here. That's a terrible superhero
it's
name.
The Nit Ninja.
The Nit Ninja, I like that. So, it's that expectation is still held high for them so that, you're also comfortable that if you step away to go to Disney World or whatever it is, that my operation is still going to run the same. There's still the same culture that's being built in my business, that it doesn't matter whether I'm here or not. I want, more so than anything else, I don't want people to come in and talk about how great I am. I want people to come in and talk about how great my folks are, so that then I can go and say, hey, look, so-and-so called me and said they really appreciated the way you handled them, or that, they were in a pinch here and they felt like you really bent over to really help them get through this process, even though they knew we were up against time frame here. I mean, that is what you want as an owner in that small business. And it's the experience that you get in the small business that you don't tend to find in the larger businesses. It gets lost in a lot of the larger businesses. But the leaders in those businesses as well are the ones that they're the gatekeepers to it. So as a small business owner and you know that everything's riding on that, boy, it's pretty easy to keep that key to that gate really close to yourself and not train other people up and teach other people how to treat people with those same types of enthusiasm and the empathy and everything that they need when they hit your front door. So for you building your business up on that, you're continuing to interject Sonia back into the business by creating a bunch of little Sonias around there that all have that same type of outlook. And listen, these may be people that don't stick it out with you, but they may be somebody that goes and opens a small business somewhere down the road, and you are the mentor to those folks who go, man, I can remember how this made me feel, and I want that as a part of my business. You know, the most valuable piece of information that I took from Leader in my business one time was I had a guy, and I really kind of pride myself on being a lot like him, but he had the ability when he met somebody for the first time that it was almost like he'd known him for 20 years. As a kid, I mean, I was 21 or 22 at this time when I'm shadowing him as his assistant manager and trying to figure out, like, man, how does this guy do this? And I just started looking at little pieces and taking little pieces from that leader. Is the first thing I noticed was the way he shook people's hands. Like, it wasn't just a shake, like, you know, a little dead fish, a little handshake or whatever. It was a shake, a lean in, his left hand being on their forearm, and just, you know, really kind of not an over accentuated handshake, but one that you just normally wouldn't get. And then it would just be like, you know, talking, like, we're not sitting there answering a bunch of their questions as much as we're having a conversation. Tell me about yourself kind of deal. And I watched this day in and day out. And I watched it as almost like a disarmament method when he would come up against some of the ones I'm like, this one's going to be really bad. And then watch him just diffuse that situation through his kindness and through his genuine ability to really be able to connect with somebody right there on the spot by not talking about the problem, but talking about the person. Right. And then it's a lot easier when I don't know who Sonia is. If I'm ready to rip into you, it's a lot easier for me to do that if I don't know who you are. But man, if you catch me off guard with that smile and with that laugh, man, it's going to make it really tough for me to be able to gnaw into you. But that, again, as leaders in the industry of small business, that's where we pave the way. We don't ever want to open a small business in the community that feels entitled. You know, I think if not anything, 2020 is probably set those sights a little bit higher for folks to be able to go, listen, you know, you're going to have to be really good at what you do to survive, because now people are making more conscious decisions with where their money is going to go. But just understand, you can change that at any point too. You know, maybe it wasn't a part of your culture and now it is a part of your culture as a business. So, but you've obviously carried that culture from 2012 forward. And so that's the type of business that we need in the community. But we do need leaders in our community also filling the gap. There's so much that a small business owner can do. And then we need the leadership that we put into the authority roles to really be able to listen back and be able to identify where can you fill the gap for some of these. I tell people all the time, small business problems here in town is not going to be solved by a bailout. That's not going to be what's going to happen. But it is going to be the idea that I view the podcast as, can the podcast be a bailout, so to say, for small businesses, to give them a voice, to be able to get in front of it? And it's the least that I can do. It's not costing me money to put on a podcast to be able to sit here. And if not anything, I walk away from these podcasts well more informed about businesses in town, being able to make those connections to people, and then becoming a calling card. So when I run across the person and I'm like, listen,
this.
Yeah. Hey, you should probably go to Sonia and get that checked out. I'm just saying, you know. But yeah, I mean, that is it, is you know, you build the unity in your community by being able to interact with people, learn who they are, and know what their business is, so that then you can become a reference for those businesses as well too. So stepping out there and saying, hey, we'd love to have you on the show so you can talk about your business. You know, I tell everybody kind of knows who's coming on the show when people start coming in, and they're like, how are you going to talk about lice for an hour? Right? I mean, and somebody's sitting out there on this deal asking the same question before they hit the play button on this deal. Like, there is no way. Like, listen, Sonia, we're in an hour and 47 minutes. There's no way somebody is sitting out there going, there is no way they're going to be able to talk about lice for an hour and 47 minutes. But again, I want the transparency of somebody being able to come here. Hey, maybe you skipped parts in the show. Maybe you came down to it. But the one thing that I hope garners from people is not just learning about your business, but learning about what you bring to the business and what your people bring to the business through you. And then that's the thing that's going to make people, decide to use you as a service or reference you if somebody else in their circle needs you. So we're just appreciative of you being in the community. The BCS area needs more Sonias in it. We need more businesses. I don't know, we need a whole bunch more Lice businesses, but we definitely need more Sonias. We need people who have immediate impacts on people like that, who have the ability to transcend what is going on around us that's temporary right now, to understand that we can do our part in the community every day by those interactions. And you send each customer back out into the world a better person for getting to know who Sonia is in the process that they thought was going to be a horrible experience that turns into a great experience for their kid, for their family member, for their spouse, for their parents, or even for them when they walked into the door. And that says a lot about what it is that you contribute into the community. And I'm grateful to have you as a part of that. I'm grateful to call you a fellow business owner in the community, and to be able to know that, even my reach back garnered your attention enough to go, I'd love to come on there. Because some people say it. I mean, they're like, I'd love to come on the show. And then I get them over here and they're like, man, I'm kind of nervous. Like, don't be nervous. It's all going to be great. I didn't have to worry about that with you at all. I knew as soon as I met you at the door, we were going to be in trouble. We were going to run our longest podcast ever. So, but that again is what we need in our community. Is we need those business owners in the community pouring back in, so that people will pour back into them when the time comes. And so, again, I'm just grateful to have you here.
I'm so thankful to be here, and this has been super fun. And I do like talking about lice. And
you do.
I mean, our tagline is, it's a lousy job, but someone's got to do it. And we have so much fun. I mean, we had, I think 3-4 years ago for the Christmas parade, we were a lice in Wonderland. We really do try and have fun with it. Not, again, because it's funny, but...
I told her about my intro and outro music, and she asked me if I would play Lice, Lice, Baby. So, I mean, again, it's fun to be able to joke about, because for a lot of folks in that moment, it doesn't feel like a joke. But when it's all said and done, it's good to be able to know that there's somebody in there that's got their back to be able to help them turn it into a long run. This was not as big a deal as I thought it was going to be. And you're doing that every day, and we are appreciative to have you here. I know the Bryan College Station is better for having you and your family here in it. And we're just grateful you continue to do what you do. And I wish nothing but the best for you coming up here in 2021. Does it sound terrible if I say, I really wish you the most lice cases you've ever had? I mean, but
I'm good, but
yeah, so for those of y'all that are out there, hey, hug a lot. We need y'all to hug a little bit more out there in 2021.
That's right.
I mean, listen, this could be, with these vaccines out here and everything else, this could be your biggest year ever.
Everybody's hugging.
Oh my gosh, man. Can you imagine? I mean, off go the mask.
So we're going to be hiring soon.
Wow, we're opening 9 more locations. I mean, yeah, this could be a big deal for you guys, man. There's a lot riding on this. So again, if you know Sonia, you already know everything that I've said is just matter of fact. If you don't have an opportunity to know Sonia, again, I'm not saying just swing by over there and get yourself checked out. But if you see her out in the community or whatever, just hey, just a quick little hi, a little shout out to her for what it is that she does, because again, she's making people who are running across these events in their life, she's making life a little bit easier for those guys and giving them a peace of mind that, they obviously, it's hard to find that in a lot of businesses in town. So just continue doing what you're doing, man, and God will bless you with the rest. And we're just, again, we're happy to have you as a part of Bryan College Station. I appreciate you coming on the show, spending time with me.
Thank you.
Now, you and I have now spent like 3 hours together total. And,
that's why I'm hungry.
I know. So, but I'm grateful you got an opportunity to come on here, and that I got an opportunity to sit down with you. I'm a better person for spending it with you today. So
thank you.
We love having you. Good luck to you in the future.
Oh, thank you.
Wish you nothing but the best. Have a great day, guys.